No one tells you this about attraction. When someone starts emotionally investing in another person, they don't usually leave you immediately. They slowly become different with you first. And if you're not paying attention, you'll spend months trying to fix a relationship that already started shifting somewhere else. Imagine this. At the beginning, everything felt natural. Conversations flowed. She replied quickly. She shared random details about her day. You didn't have to guess where you stood. But recently, something feels off. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Just subtle changes. She still talks to you. She still says she's busy. She still acts normal in public. But the energy is different. Her attention feels thinner. And you can't prove anything, so you start questioning your own instincts. Maybe she's just stressed. Maybe she's tired. Maybe you're overthinking. But deep down, something in you knows the connection is fading, and it's not just because of time. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. People rarely start entertaining someone new because their partner suddenly became not good enough. It usually happens because the emotional dynamic changed long before the new person appeared. Human attraction is heavily driven by novelty, validation, and emotional stimulation. When someone new enters the picture, the brain releases dopamine. That dopamine doesn't necessarily mean love. It means excitement, curiosity, possibility. And when a relationship becomes emotionally predictable, some people start seeking that stimulation somewhere else without fully realizing what they're doing. This is where the subtle signs begin. One of the first things that changes is emotional availability. She still talks to you, but the depth disappears. Conversations that used to last hours suddenly become short exchanges. She responds, but she doesn't engage. You tell her something personal, and she reacts with polite interest instead of genuine curiosity. It feels like you're talking to someone who is physically present but mentally somewhere else. That's because attention is a limited resource. If someone new is occupying her emotional curiosity, your conversations start receiving the leftover energy. Another quiet shift happens with transparency. Before, she casually told you about people in her life. Now certain names stop appearing in conversation. Details become vague. Stories sound incomplete. It's not always lying. Sometimes it's selective honesty. Because admitting a new emotional connection would force her to confront something she might not want to admit even to herself. So the brain does what it often does in uncomfortable situations. It avoids clarity. Another sign is subtle comparison. When someone starts entertaining another person, their perception of their current partner begins to shift. Things that never bothered her before suddenly become irritating. Your jokes aren't as funny. Your habits feel more annoying. Your presence feels heavier. This isn't always because you changed. It's because the brain is unconsciously comparing two emotional experiences. The new one feels fresh. The old one feels familiar. And novelty almost always wins in the short term. Here's where many people make the biggest mistake. They sense the distance and start chasing harder. They text more. They ask more questions. They try to prove their value. But psychologically, this often accelerates the problem. When someone is already drifting emotionally, increased pursuit can feel like pressure. And pressure rarely creates attraction. It creates avoidance. This is where attachment styles start revealing themselves. Anxiously attached people respond to distance with pursuit. They try to close the emotional gap as quickly as possible. Avoidantly attached people respond to pressure with withdrawal. So when these two patterns collide, the relationship enters a loop. The more one person chases, the more the other pulls away. And if a third person is quietly offering effortless attention and novelty, that contrast becomes even stronger. Now let's talk about gender psychology for a moment. Not in a moral sense, but in a behavioral one. Men often experience attraction through visual and physical stimulation first. Women, on average, tend to develop attraction through emotional attention and psychological engagement. That means many emotional affairs don't start with obvious flirting. They start with conversation, shared frustrations, feeling understood, feeling listened to. And when someone new provides consistent emotional curiosity, it can slowly shift where her emotional energy goes. It doesn't mean she planned to betray anyone. But emotional attention is one of the most powerful bonding forces humans experience. Now here's the truth most people hate hearing. Sometimes the problem isn't just the other person. Sometimes it's the dynamic you unknowingly created. When someone becomes too predictable, too available, or too afraid of losing the relationship, the balance of emotional tension disappears. And attraction quietly weakens. This doesn't mean you should play games. But it does mean emotional independence matters. People are drawn to partners who have a life, a direction, and an identity outside the relationship. When your entire emotional world revolves around someone else, it slowly changes how they perceive your value. Not because they're cruel. Because humans instinctively respect what feels scarce and self-contained. At some point, you'll face a painful but freeing realization. You can't compete for someone's attention. You can only observe where their attention naturally goes. And if someone's curiosity, excitement, and emotional investment start moving toward another person, forcing them back rarely rebuilds real attraction. It only delays the truth. This is where self-respect becomes more important than emotional desperation. Instead of interrogating, accusing, or begging for reassurance, step back and watch behavior. Attention reveals priority. Consistency reveals intention. And distance reveals where someone's emotional energy is actually going. The real power in relationships isn't control. It's clarity. Clarity about what you will accept. Clarity about what you deserve. And clarity about when someone's actions no longer match their words. Because at the end of the day, the most painful relationships aren't the ones where someone clearly leaves. They're the ones where someone slowly fades while you keep convincing yourself nothing is wrong. And sometimes the hardest truth to accept is this. The moment you start feeling like you have to compete for someone's attention, the relationship you thought you had might already be gone. Because real connection doesn't require an audience. It requires presence. And when someone's presence starts drifting somewhere else, silence usually tells the truth before words ever will.